Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody back to day 2 of the Big 12 Media Days. We're going to have a special presentation by our new coordinator of officials. Greg Burks is going to make some comments and show you some videos and a bunch of things. But a couple of housekeeping things first. Would you please check your telephones and make sure they're on either vibrate or silent mode? And we'd also like to ask that you, when you ask a question, we have people that will bring a microphone to you. If you will, please stand up and give your name and your affiliation. It makes it a lot easier for us. Okay, I'd like to introduce our new coordinator of officials, Greg Burks. Greg has joined us from the Mountain West, where he's been the last 3 years. He's got a distinguished career as an official in the Big 12. He was the first referee for the CFP National Championship, so he's no beginner. He knows how to do this, and he's going to give us a lot of information. Greg, take it away.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before I forget, I would like to invite you all to the Big 12 officiating clinic this weekend, Saturday morning specifically at the DFW North Marriott. We'll have a media presentation there at 8 a.m. if you're interested. And you're welcome to attend the entire clinic. It goes Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's where we do the training for the entire staff. And we'll cover all of these things that I'm about to go through with you, as well as mechanics and coaching points. So if that fits your calendar, please attend. The NCAA has significant changes this year. And I will work as hard as I can to make this entertaining and interesting. You are either a rules person or you're not. And if you are, there's a lot to look at this year. We have a 2-year cycle in the NCAA. On the even-numbered years, we address everything that's out there. On the odd number years, we only deal with player safety. And so this being an even number year, you're going to see a variety of rule changes this year. I would like to note that we do have also now several different groups that impact the rules. Besides the commissioners and the rules committee, we now have a competition committee that's looking long-term at college football and has impact on the rules as to where we want to go. First thing that you're going to note this year is a crackdown on you, if you will, on uniforms. Over the last few years, the spectrum has moved towards leniency. This year, players will have to be legally equipped. And where you're going to see that play out the most, I think, in the first couple weeks, is that knees have to be covered this year. We have seen in the last couple of years players simply not covering their knees. And for both safety concerns and just for the look of the game, officials will enforce this year that knees must be covered. Upon identifying players whose knees are not covered, that player will be sent out of the game and will have to cover their knees before they can come back in. As well as covering the knees, and if you'll look at to the left there, you'll see the player whose knees on the top left, whose knees are properly covered. The second shot shows the knees half covered, and the last one shows the knees not covered at all. A player who is not covering their knees will be sent out for one play and will be able to return. A coach can call timeout to put them back in, but I don't think coaches are going to want to use too many timeouts to have knees properly covered. Along with knees, the jerseys, the mid jerseys, are no longer legal. The rule book's pretty clear that the jersey has to reach the pant level or be tucked in. And so we will also be sending players out if they fail to have the jersey down. The rationale for that is when you push the jerseys up, you can't see numbers. And we need to see the entire number. There's also been a trend for T-shirts to be hanging out underneath the jersey. We're looking for those T-shirts to be the same color as the jersey. If they're not, we're going to ask the player to tuck that in. If they refuse at some point, they'll be sent off as well. And then finally, the back pad that has been exposed quite a bit in the last few years, that has to be covered. That's pretty simple. You can just grab the jersey and pull it down. And so we're going to enforce pretty stringently these rules. And I would anticipate in the first week or two that we may be seeing a few players sent off. But I think after the first couple of weeks, everybody hopefully will get on board and it won't become an issue. This is simply a shot of a player whose knees are properly covered and is properly equipped. I'm going to kind of blow through a couple of these just because they're technical in nature: field decorative marking and advertising, jersey design, color numerals. The highlight here is that the letter C can be put on a jersey. Prohibited field equipment. For media, we are now allowing the umpire to wear a cam on their hat. I would add that that has to be pre-approved by the office before that can happen. So if you're interested in that camera with no audio component on an umpire, you need to contact the office, and we will arrange for that to occur. Coaches' phones and headsets. This is a big issue for coaches and administration. It's not for officials. This will be dealt with by administration, so I'm not going to touch base on that a little bit. Here is a big change, and this is the play clock after touchdowns and free kicks. We spend a lot of time working to try and make the game move as expediently as we can, meaning we want the game to be played in 3 hours, 3:15, 3:30 at the max, and we want to do that without taking plays out of the game. Nobody wants to take plays out of the game. So the Rules Committee is always looking at how can we speed up the game, and this is an attempt to make that happen. After a touchdown, the play clock will be set to 40 and will run immediately. So in the past, the way this worked is the referee would scan, make sure everything was good, make it ready for play at 25. In all other instances in the game, as soon as the player is down, clock is stopped, we go right to 40 and run it. We're going to do the same things with touchdowns this year. So you'll see the score, you'll see the 40 start, and it will run just like a regular play from scrimmage. The referee will be in between the center and the holder, and we'll be getting confirmation from replay that we're good. As long as that occurs with more than 25 seconds on the play clock, there'll be no interruption of play, and we'll just continue and move on. Could create some issues possibly with teams that are used to celebrating for any length of time. I think they'll have to be cognizant of that and move along a little bit here so that there's no delay. But I think once this is implemented, we'll see a little bit of time gain here in between scores and the extra point. If we do have a review at that point, replay wants to look at the play, obviously we'd stop it, we would do the review, and then we'd come back and set the clock to 25, and it would be like it's been in previous years. In an effort to make kickoffs safer, we've added a free kick, fair catch rule. On a kickoff that is fair caught inside the 25-yard line, that team will now get the ball at the 25. All of the data that we have says that we have more injuries on kickoffs because of the distance that players are running. And so the Rules Committee is trying to figure out how to write the rules so that we still have balance in the game without doing away with kickoffs and provide safety for the receiving team. We went to touchbacks going to the 25, and teams have become more proficient at the pooch kick, putting it inside the 25. And so this was added, giving the receiving team the opportunity to make that catch, a fair catch, just like they do on a punt, and taking the ball at the 25. And so that will be a new wrinkle this year that we hope will encourage the ball to just be kicked through the end zone and we have a touchback. Now, I've been asked, why don't you just do away with the kickoff then? And the problem is how do we give the kicking team an opportunity to get the football back with an onside kick when they're behind in the game? And smarter minds than mine will have to figure out a way for us to make that happen so that it works a little more effectively. But this is the first attempt at trying to give teams the opportunity to be at the 25 and limit some of the contact on kickoffs. This is one of the worst worded rules I think I've ever seen and has created a lot of confusion. Basically what this says is the offensive team does not have to attempt the try if they don't want to. So if the game's in doubt and they are ahead by 1 or 2 points, they do not have to attempt to try. The way this is worded, it kind of makes it sound like the defensive team has a choice of whether they attempt that or not. What's happened is that we've had several games that end with a touchdown that puts the offensive team up by 1 point. Celebration, run off the field at the end of the game, and the way the rule was written, we had to bring them back out, put them on the field for them to take a knee. And so now we're allowing the offensive team to choose not to attempt the extra point. Blocking below the waist. This is the hardest rule to enforce for officials without question in the game. And I'd like to say you can have the same play occur in 3 separate situations and have 3 different rulings. So I think we all know that on change of possessions and kicks, you can't block below the waist at any time, anywhere on the field. We know that that block below the waist inside the tackle box is legal by all linemen from any direction, but it gets very convoluted outside of that tackle box. And so in an effort to clean this up, we've rewritten the rule so it goes like this. No change to the lineman initial position. So the tackle box goes from tackle to tackle. Those players on the offensive line, stationary in that box, may block from any direction as long as the ball is still in the box. All other teammate players are allowed to block below the waist only if the force of the initial contact is directed from the front, 10-2. Within the last couple of years, 10-2 has become the code word for officials. Driving a car, 10-2 on the wheel, this is what we're talking about. Directed means inside of that 10-2. So if a player turns this way, his 10-2 is here. If he turns this way, 10-2 is here. You could still be blocked from the front at the knees, but if your attention is over here, your 10-2 is here, and it would make this block illegal. No longer from the front. So you can see an official really has to see the entire play and know where the direction of the block came from to be able to rule whether or not the block was legal. So there are 3 exceptions. Teammate players may not block below the waist when the block occurs 5 yards or more beyond the neutral zone. That's an important change. Last year, once the ball was outside of the box, offensive players could block below the waist anywhere on the field, downfield. Now they can only block within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. That's a significant change. Again, it's for safety. This is a very difficult block to referee, but it's also at times a blindside block that players don't see, and for safety reasons it's being restricted when it can be done. Players outside the tackle box at the snap, wide receivers, or any back lined up outside the tackle or in motion at the snap may not block below the waist toward the initial position of the ball at the snap. Usually that's called a crackback. So when those receivers come back towards the ball, they have to be in front, ball outside of the zone. If they're even if they're in front and the ball is in the zone, that's an illegal block because we don't feel the defender has an opportunity to protect themselves and see the block coming. The game is getting more and more restrictive as far as low blocks, and it's done for the safety of the players. Once the ball has left the tackle box, a player may not block below the waist towards his own end line. That's a peel back block. You see that often with offensive linemen. May lose contact with the defensive lineman and they go low at that point towards their own end line. That is only legal as long as the ball is in the box. Leaping. The leaping rule has been changed a couple of times, and this is an attempt to make it as simple as we can make it. And so now what you see is reference to the blocker's frame. So if I'm a blocker here, you'll know that last year the rule was that if I ran forward more than 1.5 yards and jumped up and my body was moving forward instead of vertical, that was a foul. Well, it was kind of nonsense. What if a guy was 20 yards away, that player ran up and jumped straight up? It was still a foul if he was leaning forward. And so now the reference is to the blocker. The the player leaping must leap vertical and not go into the leaper's space above them. And so what we're looking for is players to maintain going straight up. If that player goes straight up and then the blocker comes out and makes contact with them, that's a legal play. The reason this is in is many of you saw the play where timing the snap, came from the middle of the formation, jumped right over the line and blocked a kick. It's a great athletic play. But what we see happen more often than not is that blocker stands up, catches that defender, and flips him on his head. And so this rule now applies both to field goals, tries, and also for punt on the punt shield. You can jump, but you have to jump vertical. You can't go into the space of the blocker. And if the contact is made, it must be by the blocker moving into the leaping player, not the leaping player. Field goal penalty enforcement. The football rules continue to evolve. And the reason they evolve is because coaches outsmart the rules and find ways around rules. And so then the rules committee meets and says, okay, the game's being played differently. How do we change the game so that it fits today's? The field goal penalty enforcement for years was you had to either choose between the penalty or the points. Meaning if there was a personal foul on a field goal, you had to choose between the two. Do you take the penalty and then continue the drive? And in all other instances, that 15-yard penalty was assessed onto the next play. And that's simply what's happened here. So you'll now be able to take the 3 points for the field goal, and if there's a personal foul in the defense, it'll be enforced on the kickoff. It will simply mean that this rule is enforced on field goals the same way it's been enforced in all other parts of the game. 10-second runoff. With less than 1 minute in either half, and a replay review on the field, and that ruling is reversed, and the correct ruling would not have stopped the game clock, then the clock will be reset to the time the ball is declared dead by replay. That sounds like a lot, but it's pretty simple. If, in replay, we find that we incorrectly stopped the clock, we are going to put the clock back to where the game would have been. And here's the example. Quarterback rolls out, is tackled, and is going down and throws a pass. That pass is either completed or intercepted, and we have play after that. And when we go back to replay, we find that the quarterback's knee was down. Okay, everybody with me? He's down. If we would have gotten that right on the field, and by the way, we teach our officials, if they're not absolutely certain to let that play go because replay can fix that play and bring it back, and you don't want to put somebody down because there's no way you can pick them back up in replay. So we're going to let that play go. Replay's going to come back and say, no, the quarterback was down. He was down at 14 seconds left to play. We're going to set the clock to 14, and we're going to take 10 seconds off. And the reason we take 10 seconds off is we are assuming that that team would take at least 10 seconds to line up and run the next play. If that makes sense. And so either team may call a timeout and stop the clock at that point. But it's simply a way, because of the growth of replay, it would not be fair for that player to be down, for us to go back and set it at 14 when more time would have run off the clock if it was running at that point. I'm not even going to go here. This was removed, and it had to do with putting time back on the clock after replay. But we won't go there. Instant replay, collaborative replay. I think everybody knows that the Big 12 has gone to collaborative replay. The NCAA has made it part of the rule book that allows for conferences to do that. I think 4 of the Power 5 all have collaborative replay. It just means that games that are played in the Big 12, there's a replay official on site, and then in the command center, there's also ROC, Replay Command Center, is that official, replay official, is monitoring that game as well. And so there are several levels of oversight there, and the book simply gives us the ability to look at those plays and have additional input. I will mention that the Big 12 this year is also going to implement screens on the sideline. You've seen those in the NFL. The value of that really is a referee who is in charge of the game never has seen the play in the Big 12. You go put the headset on, the replay official explains to you what's gone on, and then you turn on the mic and make the announcement without ever seeing the play. And if you think about that, all those plays that occur in the end zone, catch, no catch, many of those plays, the referee never really saw what happened. This will give the referee input as well with replay. And I think it's just really going to do a couple things. It's going to make our referees' announcements clear. They'll actually have seen the play, and it'll also give them input as far as their opinion on given plays. Targeting rule. Focus of targeting over the last few years has been paramount in college football. I think we're making real strides, headway in that. Replay, consistency in targeting. We have a national replay clinic where we bring in all the replay officials, and we spent a lot of time working on that this summer. There's no changes to the replay this year. I would remind you 913, 914. 913, it's illegal to use the crown of the helmet. So if I draw a circle around the helmet, above the face mask all the way around, that's by definition the crown. It's illegal for a player to use that part of his helmet as a striking device. That's 913. 914 is hitting any defenseless player, and by definition, defenseless players are quarterbacks, receivers that have not possessed the ball, players in possession of the ball that haven't had it long enough to protect themselves, like kickers and receivers. 914, you cannot hit a defenseless player above the shoulders than the neck and head injury with any part of your body. And that sounds simpler than it is. Catch, no catch, followed by contact. If you rule it a catch, sometimes that means it's not targeting. And so we were discussing earlier maybe making the command center open for you if you're interested to come in, not on game day Saturday, but on another evening to work on the actually on our systems and see how that's done, so you have a better idea of the replay system and how we work it. A couple of editorial changes, not biggies, but they will be for officials. In the past, forward pass has always been determined by the elbow, the hinge. We've now changed it to the hand. The film is so good that we can see when the hand starts forward as being the start of a forward pass. And so that changed from the elbow to the hand. Unfair clock tactics. I've already had one coach call me about this, which I find to be interesting. There was a play last year where a team was ahead by about 10 points. There's 17 seconds left on the clock. Their opponent is on the 7 going in. They decide that the best way to protect their lead is just not to let them score. And so at the snap, every defensive player bear hugs and throws the offensive player to the ground. So there's no way they can score. The clock runs off. We enforce the penalty. They do it again. Clock runs out. Game's over. That's clearly an unfair tactic. And so this year, if the referee deems unfair tactics, the penalty will be enforced and the time will be placed back on the clock. So in that scenario, let's say there were 17 seconds left in the game. When that foul occurred, we would go half the distance to the goal, and we would put 17 seconds back on the clock to eliminate any unfair advantage. Loose ball out of bounds was changed. There was a play in the national championship game last year where there was a catch, and the wording says that other than a kick that scores a field goal, a ball not in player possession is out of bounds. The rule is changed to control. Control means you have control of the football without necessarily having a foot on the ground. Technical point, but it changes what could and couldn't and would not be a catch. Roughing the passer was totally rewritten this year. The rule was pretty basic and didn't include many of the things that we see in the targeting rule. And so without going into all of those things, it talks about what you cannot do to a quarterback. And the game has gotten much more restrictive on what you can and cannot do to a quarterback. And so it just cleans up the rules so that forcible contact to the head and neck, you can never hit a quarterback in the head with any force. You can't throw a quarterback to the ground. You can't punish the quarterback once he's on the ground. And you have to make sure that quarterback has reestablished himself as a player before you block him on a change of possession. I'm not going to go into the major mechanics changes where the official stands, but I would be happy to entertain any questions that you may have at this point.